The bus door folded shut behind me with a hiss that sounded too much like a warning, and for a moment I considered stepping back out into the rain. Inside, the air was warm, perfumed, and strangely tense, like a room where an argument had just ended. I told myself survival was about choices, and I had already made mine. They were already seated when I walked down the aisle, faces half lit by passing streetlights, eyes catching and releasing me in fragments. Laughter rippled softly, but it felt rehearsed, delayed by half a second. I took the last empty seat, aware of how alone I suddenly felt among so many people. The engine growled, deep and hungry, and the bus lurched forward before I was fully settled. Outside, the city blurred into streaks of neon and shadow, dissolving too quickly to remember. I wondered why none of them looked out the windows. The woman across the aisle smiled at me, slow and deliberate, as if she already knew my name. Her perfume cut through the stale diesel smell, sharp and intoxicating. Primera looked Hawaii, unsettled by the certainty in her eyes. At the next turn, my phone buzzed in my pocket, though Primera did not remember turning it on. The screen lit up with a single message from an unknown number, empty except for a blinking cursor. When I glanced up, every face was turned toward me. They looked away at the same time, like actors missing their cue by design. Conversation resumed in low murmurs, words melting into noise I couldn't quite separate. I told myself I was imagining patterns, because fear needed something to hold. The bus took a road I didn't recognize. Narrower, darker, lined with buildings that leaned inward like they were listening. Streetlights flickered, each one briefly illuminating the same expressionless driver. I tried to catch his eye in the mirror, but it reflected only darkness. A laugh erupted from the back, too loud, too sudden, and then stopped as if cut with a blade. My heart kept racing long after the sound died. I realized I couldn't remember where I was supposed to get off. The woman beside me shifted closer, her arm brushing mine, sending a chill through my skin. She whispered something I couldn't hear, yet I felt the meaning settle heavily in my chest. I nodded without knowing why. Time stretched inside that bus, elastic and cruel, minutes snapping back into seconds without warning. My phone buzzed again, the screen now showing a photo of me sitting exactly where I was. The time-stamp read 5 minutes from the future. I stood abruptly, gripping the overhead rail as the bus swayed. The conversation stopped again, sharper this time, like glass shattering. No one told me to sit down, but every instinct screamed that I should. The driver spoke for the first time, his voice low and distorted, announcing a stop that meant nothing to me. The doors remained closed, mocking the idea of escape. I felt trapped inside a moving thought I couldn't control. As the bus pressed on, fragments of memory surfaced, disjointed and unreliable. I remembered interviews, questions about fear and attraction, forms I didn't fully read. I remembered signing something because the room was cold and I wanted to leave. The women laughed again, softer now, intimate, like a shared secret. I noticed how none of them seemed tired, despite the hour and the endless road. Their eyes reflected light differently, too evenly, too perfectly. Another message arrived, this one with words. It said, "Observe your reactions carefully." My hands trembled as I typed a reply, but the message vanished before I could send it. The screen went black. The road outside dissolved into forest, trees closing in so tightly their branches scraped the windows. The bus slowed, laboring like it was climbing something unseen. I could hear my own breathing louder than the engine. The woman across from me tilted her head, studying me with professional curiosity. I realized then that I was the only one sweating. Fear, it seemed, was not a shared experience here. When the bus finally stopped, the silence felt heavier than motion. No doors opened. No one moved. I understood then that this was the moment I had been brought here for. The driver turned slightly, just enough for me to see his eyes in the mirror. They were empty, reflective surfaces, rather than organs. I felt something inside me begin to unravel. Memories crashed together, forming a shape-eyed in T12C. I wasn't a passenger by accident, or by fate. I was the variable. The women stood, one by one, surrounding me without touching. Their presence pressed in from all sides, warm and inescapable. I realized the bus wasn't transporting us anywhere anymore. A voice echoed in my head, calm and familiar, explaining survival metrics and emotional thresholds. It sounded like me, rehearsed and confident. I felt sick recognizing it. I remembered designing a scenario meant to feel intimate and threatening, a controlled nightmare. I remembered insisting realism required beauty, proximity, and isolation. The memory burned worse than fear. The bus began moving again, but now I understood it wasn't on a road. It was cycling through my own expectations, my own cruelty. Every glance, every smile was something I had approved. The woman beside me leaned in and finally spoke clearly. She thanked me for participating. Her voice carried no malice, only completion. I tried to scream, but the sound caught somewhere deep, swallowed by understanding. Survival, I realized, was never the point. Observation was. As the forest dissolved into white light, I wondered if I would remember this version of myself. The bus kept going, and I stayed seated, unsure if standing was still allowed.